I'm here with Jim Newman and Tony Parsons. What do you have to say for yourselves, gentlemen? Hey, everybody. Peace. What's up? Today, I want to talk about the lineage of what some people call Neo-Advaita, created by Tony Parsons. As far as I can tell, I believe Tony Parsons was the originator of a certain style of non-dual communication that has become increasingly popular. I'm actually more familiar with Jim Newman, who was heavily influenced by Tony. And yeah, Tony's work seems to have generated a movement of quite a few teachers and communicators who communicate about non-duality in quite a radical, uncompromising style, you could say, a radical, uncompromising style. This is the group of people who frequently use phrases like, "This is nothing, there's no one here. This is nothing, there's no one here." And first of all, I just want to say that I think there's a lot of greatness in this lineage. I really appreciate the direct, uncompromising style, and I see this lineage as kind of a radical line of non-dual butchers whose direct, radical pointing is quite effective, quite an effective slashing mechanism that can really rapidly slash through concretized belief systems, and can potentially, if the seeker is ripe, can really pull the rug out from under an apparent individual with great efficiency. So there's a lot of upside to this lineage. I've received a lot from it, especially Jim's messages. I attended a retreat with him one time in Mexico. And yeah, generally want to say thank you and send many blessings to Jim and Tony. So this is not, an attack on these guys. I appreciate what they're up to. And yet I wanted to talk about my experience of certain traps that I feel people can fall into when they really fixate on this lineage and they get really absorbed in this lineage and they really immerse in this lineage of teachings, because essentially what can happen, because the message is so uncompromisingly all negating, right? It's a very negating message. This is nothing for no one. There is no path. This is meaningless. This is valueless. This is purposeless. Again, these can be really potent pointers if they are received at the right moment. And at the same time, they can also be quite misleading. They can easily lead toward a sense of nihilism or solipsism or hopelessness, because what's really easy to do is to concretize and solidify what these guys are saying and kind of solidify a mental image of negation, a mental image of the true nature of reality as just this blank nothingness or void, when really this is a fullness from another perspective. And perhaps it's more accurate and more important to say that this is a fullness, this is a juiciness, this is an utterly formful dancingness. It's utterly suggestive. It's dripping with voluptuousness. It's it's exploding with meaningfulness and purposiveness. And sure, you can't ever pin down what precisely that meaning or purpose is. It's not a fixed meaning or purpose. It's a nebulous, ambiguous quality of meaningfulness and purposiveness that permeates the entire field at all times. And what non-duality really leads toward is a gradual collapse or a gradual seeing through of fixed meanings. just seeing that fixed meanings and fixed constructs and fixed beliefs never could contain reality. Just seeing that this present experience is, number one, just too simple, too close, too intimate, and also just too slippery, too full of an infinity of pixelated information, and too dynamic, too unstable, too constantly morphing for it to ever be fit inside of a limited, finite construct. This is the real meaning of infinity. It means something similar to what Buddhists mean by emptiness, but the word emptiness can also be misleading because especially Western seekers tend to reify an image of emptiness as kind of an empty void space, which is really inaccurate and really misleading, because what emptiness really points at is just non-finitude, indefinability, unresolvability, unfindability, unpinned down ability, nebulosity, ambiguity, meaning there's this fundamental indefiniteness in everything, and you can't really say what anything is. Everything codependently arises as this field of infinite information, and you can't actually pin down what anything is. You can't separate anything out from the full field. So to say what anything is, you'd have to say what the full field is, and no one can do that, because before you could ever say anything about it, it's already shape-shifted into something else. Its appearance is its vanishing. It's this ghost-like, dream-like, insubstantial dance of infinite pixelation, and that insubstantiality is really what Jim and Tony are pointing at when they say things like, there's just what's happening, with nothing behind it. There's nothing, this is nothing, there's no one here. They're really trying to slash through all these layers of solidification so that the apparent seeker can get a direct taste, a direct glimpse of this ghost-like apparition from kind of the viewless view of emptiness. However, again, what can happen with that is that can create a reified image that is rather despair-inducing in the mind of the apparent individual, a rather nihilistic, negating image that can take a long time to overcome. If this really gets embedded, if you really get a crystallized, encrusted ideology in your head, if you turn what these guys are saying into an ideology, which a lot of human beings are prone to do, they're prone to take any message and turn it into a belief system. And if you turn this message into a belief system, it's depressing as hell. It's a super depressing message. There's nothing for no one. This is hopeless. This is meaningless. This is valueless. This is purposeless. You can see why this message can easily lead toward depression, depersonalization, derealization, nihilism, solipsism. So this is something you got to watch out for with this message. The other thing, and perhaps to me the more, well, perhaps more important in some cases thing to notice, is that because this lineage places such a big emphasis on the statement, there's no one here, and because they talk a lot about the quote-unquote non-event of the separate self falling away or being seen to have never existed in the first place, there ends up being a lot of discussion and dialogue and questions within this lineage about the falling away of selfing, about the permanent disappearance of an apparent activity of selfing. And because there's so much dialogue about this, it really, at least for me, this is what I noticed, this was sticky for me about my engagement with these teachings. It can really create this ambient sense of a condition being placed upon unconditional freedom. And again, these guys are very clear that this is already unconditional freedom. This is already unconditional love. This is already unconditional wholeness. On one hand, they're clear on that. Yet on the other hand, they talk so much about the falling away of the apparent individual that it can easily create this ambient sense and this subtle imprint of a condition that says unconditional freedom will not be unconditionally free until there is this condition met of zero selfing, until the self falls away or until the self is seen through, there will not be liberation. So it can create yet another subtle spiritual carrot on a stick, ever receding on the horizon, which is, which is fine. There's so many of these out there, and yet, for seekers who are tired of seeking and are ready just to rest, yet another carrot on a stick is kind of the bane of a seeker's existence. You want to eliminate all carrots on sticks. And so the really important thing to realize is that if unconditional freedom required a condition of zero selfing to be unconditional freedom, it would not be unconditionally free. You really want to internalize the word unconditional. No conditions are required. No conditions are obligated to be fulfilled. There is no checklist of boxes that you need to check off as a seeker before liberation is. As these guys beautifully put it, this is already home. This is already unconditional freedom. This is already unconditional freedom, including any appearance of selfing, any activity of apparent selfhood that might be going on here. In my case, I can still totally access the perspective of Jordanness. There's this ambient, ever shifting, ever morphing Jordanness that, sure, it can't be pinned down, it can't be located, it can't be found to be an objectifiable, separate, autonomous entity, but there is and always has been this ambient sense of JB-ness, and it never has been this separate, autonomous entity. Yet even in moments where it seems like it is that, that's still unconditional freedom. One of unconditional freedom's most dominant modes is to be in a mode of being lost in interpretation. This is the magic show of Maya. There's nothing wrong with the magic show of Maya and being lost in interpretation and feeling like a self. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. That's not in any way something that prevents this from being unconditional freedom. This is already unconditional freedom. And similarly, it is not the case that every last trace or speck of selfing, of this activity of feeling like a someone or feeling an ambient sense of you-ness, it is not the case that every last speck of this needs to disappear before freedom can be realized. It's not an all or nothing deal. For one, unconditional freedom simply is, it already is the case. And for two, any time that you get a glimpse of unconditional freedom, speaking now about the apparent process of actually noticing this freedom that already is and learning to rest as this freedom that already is, anytime you get a glimpse of this, that's actually the whole thing. As Peter Brown would often say, to me, this is a much more empowering and accurate frame. Anytime you get a glimpse, that's the whole thing, because it's always the whole thing. Even when you don't get a glimpse, it's the whole thing. It's just always been the whole enchilada, the whole shooting match, right here and now. Presence is home. Presence is unconditional freedom. So every little glimpse is actually the whole thing. And every glimpse, every moment of noticing is cumulative, It builds on itself over time. There is an accumulation of noticing, an accumulation of recognition, realization that eventually crosses a certain threshold where the quote unquote true perspective or the viewless view begins to become primary in terms of how one relates to the world around oneself, you could say, for lack of better terms. This is a really crass way to put it. In terms of how one is, in terms of how this is the quote unquote viewless view, which really just points to what this moment always is, which is simply this spontaneously appearing apparition of pure dancingness that is just dancing itself and kind of effortlessly self radiating forth as this fullness of pure juiciness, and doing all of that with an astounding, unimaginable intelligence. Increasingly, that true perspective of no perspective replaces the habitual human view, or you could say it transcends and includes the habitual human view, and it becomes more primary in one's experience. And this is, what is called realization or recognition. And yet what is seen as that occurs is that nothing has actually changed at all. Nothing has truly changed at all, because this condition of home, which is just this spontaneously appearing fullness right now, the only thing we've ever known, the only thing we've ever experienced, the beginning of this sentence is totally gone. The end of the sentence is nowhere to be found until right now, and then it's gone. Just look at that. We've always only been on this razor's edge of pure meltingness right here and now, pure instability, pure dynamism. That is home. It is doing itself, and it is self-dancing, self-emanating, self-executing with utter precision, and it appears in this instantaneous flash as this completeness. It is a completion. It shows up as a complete event. This is its final form in every moment. It's already a wholeness. This is already the finish line. So recognition is the simple noticing that this has always been the case, that this has always been the finish line, and that this very simple effulgence of pure mystery, you could say, pure unknown dancingness, is home. It's home. It's rest. It's complete. Nothing needs to be done with it. Nothing to do but be you, baby. Nothing to do but be you. And so, recognition or noticing is kind of like a gradual release into unknowing, to use one of Jim's phrases that I really love. I love this phrase, a release into unknowing. It is the gradual collapse of all fixed views, freedom from fixed views or freedom from fixed meanings. This is what Nagarjuna was talking about hundreds of years ago. And in that gradual or sudden dissipation of fixed meanings, it's just increasingly seen that fixed meanings were never there, in the sense that they were never able to actually contain or objectify or pin down reality into any kind of final, fixed, definite, knowable form. Because again, there's this inherent nebulosity, this inherent indefiniteness, this inherent non-finitude in any aspect of experience. You go into any of the sense fields, you close your eyes and you look at that dancing luminosity, that dancing pixelation of infinite information in the space you'd normally think of as behind your eyelids. And that's one of the easiest access points to notice, okay, I could write a million treatises for the rest of my life about one instant of that dancingness, and I would not be able to say what that is. That's one way to quickly notice pure bottomless infinity in and as your direct experience. Just notice why everything is so unsayable. just notice that that infinite subtle pixelation, that subtle buzzingness, it permeates the full field. It permeates every sense field. This morphingness, this dancingness, this buzzingness, it's present in every sense field. And really, there are no actual distinctions or boundaries or findable edges between sense fields. This just shows up in this radiant flash as a pure continuum of aliveness. And there are these different kind of bandwidths of texture that we then arbitrarily designate as, findable, definable sense fields. But actually, again, nothing truly definite, definable, or findable can be found. And so you're left with this, absolute fullness, this utterly exquisite juiciness and artistry. This is what can be easily overlooked or negated through the Parsons Newman lineage, is just the all-inclusivity of this juiciness. Sure, you can't say what it is at all. And sure, in one sense, it is utterly insubstantial, utterly ghost-like, utterly dreamlike. It's like a flash, a pure flash with nothing behind it. Just this right now. Just this right now. Nothing is more absolute than just you eating a burrito right now. That's home. That's it. That is it. And yet, the all-inclusivity of this flash, the way that this flash warmly embraces all formfulness, every aspect of our sacramental human journeys, every aspect of the poetry of formfulness is fully embraced and fully included. And even all of our apparently fixed meanings, apparently fixed interpretations, apparently fixed words, our apparent separate selves, there is no illusion. There is no illusion anywhere. It's all that. It's all that. This is another thing that can be misinterpreted. Jim emphasizes that there's just one illusion in all of existence, and it's the separate self. And it's just like, no. Peter Brown once said, I don't see any illusion anywhere. It's all that. It's all reality, or you could say it's all that which is neither real nor unreal, including any apparent activity of dancing selfness, There's no need to demonize this apparent activity of selfness. Selfness is another beautiful mode, another beautiful, intrinsic, astounding function of this field of radiance that everything fundamentally is, that is just this right here now, just the simplicity of you eating a slice of pizza, that is pure radiance showing up as what can just seem like our ordinary lives. And it's astonishing that this field of infinite intelligence that just instantaneously, automatically shines forth effortlessly as this fullness of pure luminosity that is totally in harmony with itself and totally complete with nothing blocking anything. It's astounding that infinite intelligence can show up as just a mundane situation of me in my pajamas grabbing a midnight snack, in the wee hours of the morn. That's phenomenal. That's fantastic. And so, yeah, that's just another thing to watch out for with these types of teachings, is that it can be easy to place human life at arm's length and somehow feel like human life is less than or other than or not as primary or fundamental as nothing or absence or emptiness. And that's just not the case. There's no dichotomy whatsoever. That's the thing. There's no dichotomy whatsoever. As it says in the Heart Sutra, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. And as they say in Zen, not one, not two. Not one, not two. Not one, not two. And as the Zen proverb goes, before enlightenment, mountains are mountains and lakes are lakes. During enlightenment, mountains are no longer mountains and lakes are no longer lakes. After enlightenment, mountains are once again mountains and lakes are once again lakes. And with these guys, they love to point at the space where mountains are no longer mountains and lakes are no longer lakes, the space of emptiness, but they don't often communicate the re-embracing and the all-inclusivity of all apparent formfulness, and the fact that all formfulness and these sacramental human journeys are that, with no separation whatsoever. They're fully included in this giant, warm, eternal bear hug of, pure nowness. So, yeah. So, it is as it is. Again, I appreciate this lineage a lot. I appreciate these guys a lot. Just look at these photos. These guys, look at that. Look at the eyes on these guys, look at the innocence. These guys are beautiful. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Life. Thank you for watching this. Much love, everybody. I hope this was valuable. Peace and love to you. Take good care. Take good care. Take it easy, everybody. Peace.